was persecuted, but persevered through love of his family. He was persecuted, but yet he persevered. And I'm not going to read the whole thing in Genesis 45, but look at verse number 2. Well, we got to start with verse number 1. His brothers are all there in verse number 1. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all them that stood by him, and he cried, "Cause every man to go out from me." And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. Now we know the story. Those brethren are scared to death. Joseph never observed love in any of his brethren. Joseph never heard tender words from any of his brethren. They hated him. They wanted to kill him. It just so happened there'd be a pit nearby that they could be free of their brother's blood. But notice the observation that we're talking about that the brothers saw in Joseph. Again, love is not a creed to be confessed, but a passion to be put into practice. Notice that passion, verse 2. And he, Joseph, wept aloud. And the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brother, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Here's what's going through their mind. Can he still care about us? Is it possible that he's going to spare our lives when we deserve death? Why did he send everybody out? Did he want to kill us without anybody seeing? Why is he crying? Why is he weeping? We should be the ones weeping. Look at verse 4. He wept aloud. There's the observation of his love. Verse 4. And Joseph said unto his brethren, Get away from me. It's not what it says, is it? Come near me, I pray you. And they came near. I wonder if they were crawling on their knees when they came near. I don't know. But they came near. And he said, and they still not sure what's going on. I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. Oh, he remembers. We're in trouble. But notice the observation of love. Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that you sold me hither. For God did send me before you to preserve life. To preserve life. Amazing. We know he went through Potiphar's house. We know he spent years in prison. He spent his time in those desert places. But the heat of the desert could not ever extinguish the passion of his love towards his brothers. God did send me before you to preserve life. Verse number 7. Again, he repeats himself. That tells you what he has seen in his brothers' faces. They're just not getting it. And God sent me before you to preserve you a posterity in the earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. What is he saying? I'm here as your Savior. God put me here. You didn't put me here. You are working according to God's plan to get me where I needed to be. That's deep faith, isn't it? Not to want to seek revenge, but to say, God was able to keep me safe in your hands. God was able to keep me away from you, but since God allowed me to be in that pit, it's because you did it, but God allowed you to do it. And I want to send a great deliverance, he says in verse number 8, or 7 in verse 8. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. And he hath made me a father to Pharaoh, a 30-year-old young man. God hath made me a father to Pharaoh. In other words, Pharaoh is listening to whatever Joseph says, and Joseph doesn't have the title, but he has all the power. You know, titles aren't important when you have the power of God. You don't need a title. So verse 8 again, so now it was not you that sent me hither, but God. He hath made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. You think they believed that? You think they believed his words on that day? Anybody have a clue why he did or didn't? Why his brothers believed or didn't believe? Do you think they believed that speech on that day? Anybody have a clue? Because they still couldn't comprehend that kind of love. I believe Jacob lived for 17 years in Egypt before he died. But now Jacob's dead. What are the brothers doing? They're running back to Joseph, thinking, this is it, Dad's dead, we're dead. And he has to reveal this, so to speak, this whole speech all over again because they still couldn't comprehend that love. They still, even though it was observed, they could see it, they still couldn't comprehend it. So when Dad dies, they're back saying, oh, please spare our lives, please spare our lives. And Joseph's saying, listen, I told you before. God put me here, not you. They couldn't believe that kind of love. Oh, the world needs to see that kind of love from us, a love that says, I just can't believe you love me like that. After all I've put you through, after all I've said about you, after all the hurt I've caused in your life, and you're going to say, well, God allowed that to happen for your benefit. And then the last one to look at, and we'll close. So we saw Noah was a preacher and a provider. Joseph was persecuted but persevered. Moses, and we know that story well, was provoked, but he still was a peacemaker. He was provoked. They rebelled against Moses and against God 10 different times. 10 times through those 40 years in the desert, they're rebelling against Moses. They want to go back to Egypt, and they want to go back on their vegetarian diet. But look at Exodus. Again, that's easy to find, so we'll go ahead and turn there. Chapter 32 and verses 30 through 33. Exodus 32, verses 30 through 33. Exodus 32, verse 30. So Moses, he's provoked, but yet a peacemaker. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses said unto the people, you have sinned a great sin. And now, notice this, and now I will go up unto the Lord. Peradventure I shall make an atonement for your sin. Moses returned unto the Lord and said, oh, this people have sinned a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sin, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. 10 times. Yet he still goes back to the Lord to try to make peace for his people that do not like him. Even when we are provoked, love demands that we play the part of a peacemaker. To resolve to bring back the unity and the love one for another. And we'll go ahead there and close tonight. Love needs to be a consuming commitment, a fire that can never be put out. So we talked about little Ted Stollard from the time he was first grade to the time he became a doctor. What made the difference was that one teacher that accepted his gift in a plain brown bag, a gaudy looking bracelet that was missing the stones, some cheap perfume, and yet she sprayed that perfume on her wrist, put the bracelet on, accepted his gift. That one little action changed his entire destination, from the worst of his class to the best of his class. So love is not just a creed. It's a passion that must be displayed with every spoken word, with every action, with every attitude. They only can see Jesus by seeing Jesus in you. So thank you, church, for being that kind of a church. Thank you for the love that you demonstrate over and over and over again, and just being able to stand back and watch that is amazing. Been through a lot of churches, preached in many, 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 many different churches. But there's none like this place. Nothing like home. Nothing like you all. Thank you for being that people. Let's go ahead and bow our heads, and we'll be dismissed in prayer. Brother Ken, would you dismiss us in prayer, please?
Father God, thank you for your love. Lord, thank you for the message tonight, encouragement. Lord, to know that you demonstrated your love towards us on the cross. We just thank you for that. Lord, help us to continue to be what you want us to be, these people to serve you, to do right. Lord, we just thank you and praise you for your goodness. Lead, guide us through the rest of this week, and we just continue to serve you faithfully, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
And real love doesn't mention grease spots from In-N-Out, right? Lord bless you. You're dismissed.